Let's talk about the tariffs of nationalist Narnia. Boy, today was weird. I think today was good, but we're in such a crazy space as a country in a broken system of governance, which, by the way, started a lot longer than 10 years ago. 6-3 Supreme Court decision that says trying to use the emergency measures in one law didn't fly with tariffs. You can't just every day wake up and decide who gets 10, 20, 30, 50, 1,000, 68 million% worth of tariffs. The majority of the court didn't buy it. The majority decision was written by Chief Justice Roberts. Funniest tweet about him writing funniest social media post of him writing the majority decision was, I really hope Chief Justice Roberts has all his mortgage paperwork in order, because he's probably going to end up criminally charged by the DOJ after this decision. Dear leader, porn star Humper is pissed, arrogantly out of bounds kind of pissed. He thinks this is an affront to America. It's an affront to his power. He thinks the Supreme Court is now looking out for foreign interests. He said that. That was weird. He was ashamed of the Supreme Court. He said that. Also weird. His underlings, which I'll get into more in a bit, but his underlings really started to make statements that really show that they are simply acolytes and sycophants. They're not any sort of policy leader. The people that were selected to these cabinet positions under dear leader do not deserve to be there. That's critically apparent right now. Cabinet members threatening other countries, either you accept the deal we made under our illegal tariffs or we'll name you an adversary. That's quite absurd. That's quite absurd. You used an illegal measure. You probably knew that it was illegal. Because the whole point of Project 2025 was to run over the guardrails. Okay. They wanted to bum rush the system, especially the courts. So they knew what they were doing with this emergency declaration where there was really no emergency. There's no currency crisis. There's no dollar crisis. We don't have an imbalance of payments like you had under Nixon. Okay. So could he apply tariffs in a non-emergency declaration? Yeah, a lot of presidents have. Biden, Obama, Trump in his first term against certain Chinese goods. When you use the Trade Act of 1974, sections 302 and 122, one is the imbalance of payments, one is a dollar crisis, and you get 150 days to take measures to stabilize the economy. At the 150 days, the tariffs automatically stop unless Congress reapproves it for another period, which I don't think will happen in a midterm year, by the way. Yes, we are going to see a global 10% tariff, which is still going to be litigated, by the way. Congress, House and Senate just said to the administration, to the executive branch, that we don't think you should do this tariff game with Canada. They voted that down pretty clearly. So he just reiterates another 10% global policy because somehow, tariffs are the magical door to the grand economy of Narnia. You just open up the closet door and boom, you meet a Lion King and, a lot of Catholic dogma. And then all of a sudden, everything works out in your favor. That really doesn't work that way in the real world. And anybody who believes that is either selling you something bullshit or They're too stupid to breathe. I have far less problems, even with Trump in his first term. I had far less problems with them thinking that they're the arbiter of the market. Yeah. Congress fucked up again. We can get mad as we want about things against Trump and realize Trump is trying to capitalize on something that was a congressional mistake. Congress should have never ceded their trade authority to the executive, but they did that under the Trade Act of 1974. They again did it with the Emergency Tariff Act, but the emergency is what got thrown out. So he still has plenty of legal backing to implement more tariffs. But again, it's not like they're not going to be challenged. They are. Especially challenged where Congress said no, Canada, and where countries, a dozen, have made trade deals based on the old taco tariff system. So a lot of litigation is going to come flying down. Uh, yeah, Trump's response was absurd. His cabinet members came off as childish, uninformed, and bitchy, as well as undiplomatic. Their whole stance is falling apart because um, now they have a situation which is really hard to unwind. You know, the even Kavanaugh mentioned this in his shitty dissent, and it was a shitty dissent. Um, Kavanaugh says you can't do this, can't throw it out because unwinding the $175 billion worth of collected revenue. Remember, Trump keeps saying he collected $8 trillion and $20 trillion worth of investment. Both numbers he keeps saying are lies. It's not true. Revenues collected is 175 billion at most. The lowest number I've seen is $130 billion. But trying to unwind this and give the money back because you charged an illegal import tax. And that's what the court decided today. You declared an emergency that didn't exist. You abused authority under an emergency law based on an emergency that doesn't exist. And you basically emplaced a illegal import tax on U.S. consumers and businesses. Now you have to give the money back. Now, what's funny about Kavanaugh, Alito, and Thomas, the three stooges, the three nationalist stooges of the Supreme Court, is the way they acted today is they would have given this same decision if it was Obama, Biden, Clinton, Hillbot, Kamala. No, they wouldn't have. No, they would have not. There is no fucking way they give the black dude in the tan suit free reign to implement any digit percentage of tariffs on any country on any whim. There is no fucking way in the universe Alito approves that, or Thomas, or Kavanaugh. But Kavanaugh's big, crying in the sand, sitting on the beach, crying in the sand was, oh my God, how do we unwind this? We should let it stay because how do you unwind it? It's going to be messy. Yeah, it is going to be messy. Okay, there's an easy solution to it. You just write it off as a tax deduction. But the decision is a big thing today. Don't get me wrong. It's a huge milestone on presidential authority, separating Article 1 from Article 2 because taxation is Article 1, Congress, the legislative branch, not Article 2, the executive branch, and the White House. The White House is not supposed to have this revenue generation authority. That was explicitly put there in the House by Madison. Okay, this is Madisonian logic. And now we're being told it's absurd. We're ashamed. We're going to have to do something about the courts. That's another quote. because suddenly the Trumpian nationalists think James Madison was a moron and he's not worthy of listening to anymore. That's why I keep telling you guys, these are not conservatives. No fucking way. These guys are nationalists with a lot of communist influence. They don't give a shit about Madison or Jefferson. They don't give a shit about Franklin or Jay. They don't give a shit about Washington or Adams. They give a shit about the feels they get from Trumpian politics. That's it. Okay, it's a gang mentality. That's what I've been telling you now for years. But within that gang mentality, here comes our real problem. Okay, again, I'm not trying to minimize the court decision. It's massive. It's huge. It blows out of the water Trump's standing economic policy base, which was a stupid base, a stupid hill to die on. But dumb people do stupid things. I can't help that. Okay. Dumb Americans elected a felon, carnotist, rapey pedo as president, and then he fucked up an economic policy. I can't stop stupid. It's not within my ability, especially mass stupidity like Trumpian politics. But if you just take a step back for a second and you realize that what was just adjudicated is a lot bigger sociologically and psychology than just a tariff policy or economic base policy. It's about personalizing a government system, a personified authoritarian dictatorship. The problem wasn't the Supreme Court decision in the minds of the Trumpian right. The problem with the Supreme Court decision today is how dare you defy our emperor? That's what they're mad about. Trump's mad about it personally. Okay, that's why he immediately says, I'm going to do something else under a different statute, which under the Trade Act 1974, he can do within some limitations, but within reason, yes, he can implement a different set of tariffs, but at least he can't do the taco lotto shit. 36, 56, 10,000%, 72%, 12%. No, it's not 12%. It's 57%. No, I got off the phone. It's 78%. No, he can't do that anymore. That's a massively good thing because he was creating complete chaos in the equities and bond markets. They were mitigating that chaos, but it wasn't good. But the real issue at hand here tonight is about the personification of the authoritarian system. The cabinet members circled around him, the weirdos, the cultist nationalists from the House circled around him, and basically conveyed a common message of how dare you tell the emperor no. Well, that's what Supreme Courts do. Supreme Court in Brazil just held Bolsonaro accountable and threw him in jail. The Supreme Court in South Korea just held Yoon responsible and threw him in jail for life. Okay, that's what courts do. That's what they're pissed about. It isn't about the decision per se. It isn't about tariffs per se. It's about the fact that you dared put up a firewall to the momentum of dear leader himself as an authoritarian figure. That's what they're mad at. Okay. Now here comes the problem. We all know dear leader porn star Humper is literally got one foot in the grave. He is one angry outburst from blowing a blood vessel in his eye at the lectern, shit in his pants, keeling over. Reporters get body blocked by the little Nazi princesses of the White House who always run for the camera every time he shits his pants or starts screaming in the wind. But there's going to be no hiding the fact that he's down for the count. So what has, especially after today, what does the Republican Party have? What does the Republican Party have After you go after the Supreme Court like you did in such a vitriolic way today, the way you personified decision making in this country, and what do you do in the next steps when the torch has to be patched, has to be passed? Okay, this is my problem with the far left and their whole Uncle Bernie bro love. Okay, they literally think they can turn Bernie into a left-wing dictator and he will rule like, the worm did in the Dune books by Frank Herbert. Oh, Bernie will rule for 10,000 years and build us a leftist utopia. Nope, that's not what's going to happen. Problem is now the Trumpian right actually believes Donald Trump can turn into the worm in Dune, the worm emperor, and live 10,000 years and rule and decide everything in their favor. They have nothing to worry about because our God King is here. That's not going to work out the way you think it's going to work out. Because I haven't looked at Polymarket or the other one, the predictive markets, the gambling sites pretending not to be casinos, about current events and news and all that shit. Haven't looked at them in the last, I don't know, couple of weeks, but I'll go back. I'm wondering, what the betting windows, what's the group sourcing of the forecasting about when Trump's age and health problems going to catch up to him, and he is either going to be 25th Amendment because he's in medical distress or incapacitated in a coma, whatever, or he just keels over. Now you gotta pass the torch to JD fucking moron Vance, the man who's more over his head than any other man in American history. To say JD Vance is not ready for prime time would be a serious understatement. That's before you get to the level of Trumpian politics that concerns me. Okay? JD Vance could not lead a thirsty horse to water. How do you think he's going to take over the Trumpian cabal and drive it forward and turn it into his manifestation? That's never happening. That's never happening. That's like expecting somebody else to take over the Manson family. Ain't happening. Okay. So now that they've come up with this system, which is very angry, which is very reactive, it's hostile, if not vitriolic. When you start saying you're ashamed of Supreme Court justices because you didn't get your way, when I'm pretty sure everybody in government knew your claims about an economic emergency were bullshit, because everything's an emergency under Project 2025. Pamela says Vance will do it with Trump's secret police, i.e. violence. And then Connie says, I can appreciate your description of J.D. Vance. Thank you both for the comments. Yeah, Vance will try to do it with violence. I'm not doubting you, Pam, at all. The problem is he doesn't have the mojo Dear Leader Pornstucker has. Okay. As soon as Vance is elevated with his non-white wife and they are pictured in the White House, have taken over the White House, the whole white nationalist, white Christian, theocratic nationalist, free-for-all fight starts. Not to mention, you have a divide in MAGA, which divides between the Musk camp of billionaire-backed idiots with the Peter Thiel-backed idiots. Trump is backed by Musk. Vance is backed by Thiel. Okay? Those two fragmentations of MAGA are at loggerheads and have been the whole time. As much as Charlie Kirk was at loggerheads with Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens. Same issue. Gang on gang violence. J.D. Vance has no hope of holding the party together, holding the Trumpian coalition together, and has zero chances of winning the presidential election in 2028. And every sitting Republican strategist knows it. Why? Because Democrats won't even have to undermine J.D. Vance. Republicans will do that in their Civil War. The smartest thing for the Democratic strategists to do, put their hands up and slowly back away. And let the Velociraptor war go into full-on craziness. Now, I can see a scenario where Trump becomes incapacitated or passes away from medical issues or natural causes. J.D. Vance is elevated. He falls flat on his face. He either resigns or is impeached by his own party. Mike Grinder Johnson doesn't have the balls to ascend. So I think there's a low order of probability, 20%, let's call it, that we end up with Senator Thune, President pro tem, the Senate, as the president after Trump leaves office early. J.D. Vance attempts to take over, but falls completely flat. The party goes into chaos and at least a multi-factional war. And I think we can end up going down the secession chain. And I mean that honestly. If under any circumstance, I don't see Mike Grinder Johnson ascending from the speaker, even though he's third in line. Frankly, I don't think he's got the guts, nor the brains, or the acumen to pull it off. And I'm not the only one who knows that. He knows it too. So we could end up, sometime before the midterm, with a state funeral, a vice president who becomes president for a couple of months and realizes, his party hates him. We have a strange secession project. Secession. Yeah, it's a secession order. And we have a weird ascension that ends up with like number 4 and some rando down the list, or some rando the House elects later on. Because that's what we had to do after Nixon. Ford ascended, then nobody wanted to be VP, and we had to elect somebody in the House. Okay. Today is a bellwether for both the policy, the constitutionality, and the forward insight. Okay. Now, where it's going to be interesting for the Trumpian politics and its orbit is nothing that they're telling their constituents right now is truthful. They released this Trump RX program and a website saying, oh, we're lowering prices so much that we'll pay the cheapest prices in the industrial world. Well, factcheck.org, Reuters, a couple other places I was reading, all started calling experts in the pharmaceutical price market. And they were like, they don't know how he's making that claim that he will be the lowest internationally, because there's no international price table you can look up. That's not a thing. You can't look it up. And when they did an independent review of what's on the website, if you simply just told the pharmacist to substitute the brand name drug with a generic, you would save more money than what's available on Trump RX. If you had company healthcare, your company healthcare plan is cheaper than what's available on Trump RX. So it's a non-solution they're spending money on to tell you he solved the entire problem space and you will achieve the best possible results, even though when experts look at it, you're not achieving any results. You're not even making a dent on real pricing. And if they continue down the path that they're going, they really do not have a way to circle back around and recapture the independent voter, the non-insane Republican voter, the conservative Democrat. There's no hope for that um, going forward, because even before this tariff decision came down, before we started lying about drug prices again, he had already lost independence. I mean, when you have single digit approval per policy with independents, you do not have the support of independents. And on a national scale, what do you need to win an election in this country? Independent votes. They don't have that at all. Plus, they're losing Republican votes. You see that in the special elections. There's no way these special elections are pulling off the margins they're pulling off and the turnarounds. Districts, Trump won them last time by 17 points. Special election rolls around in 2025 or the beginning of 2026. They're losing the place they won by 17. They're losing it by 30, 35, 40. Okay. These are some of the biggest turnarounds in political history in America. Why? You've lost independence. Okay. Be independent, vote independent. We're talking a lot about that, right? Now, the way independents like me see the court decision was it was a proper interpretation of the law. There is no emergency. There is no dollar crisis. Now, if you think you need industry protectionism A or B, which I may not agree with as a groovy libertarian and an independent, but you still have that legal right to do that under the Trade Act of 1974. You do not have the right to declare emergency and do whatever the fuck you want. I think it's a completely reasonable decision. I think the dissent by Kavanaugh is total bullshit. After a while, I stopped reading because I'm like, okay, Jesus Christ, diatribe much? Sycophant much? Because again, there's no freaking way they give Obama the authority over tariffs and the taco tariff that dear leader loves. There's no way they give him that authority. No chances of that. So let's stop pretending. But where independents are going to go, wait a minute, I really don't like this situation, is the blowback they presented. It's childish, it's unprofessional, it's undiplomatic, it's untoward, it's unpresidential. And you're going to scream, kick, and cry because you declared an emergency where common sense tells us an emergency does not exist. You have ideology you want to turn into governorship on a whim, a grievance, and a chunk of animus. Okay. Now this is the cool thing about the Trade Act of 1974. If he's going to revert back to either Section 122 or Section 302 of the Trade Act of 1974, there are rules about that shit. Because the reason why Ross Vaught and Stephen Miller told Trump to use the emergency law for tariffs was there wasn't any of these restrictions. But the emergency didn't exist. That's why they lost. So now he can implement things right away and say there's a 10% global tariff, but then he's going to run afoul because you can't implement the tariffs without coordination with the departments, without congressional input, without a notice and time for comment to the public. These things you cannot just implement willy-nilly on the fly overnight or right after lunch because you didn't like what the Swiss foreign minister or the Swiss trade minister said to you when you got off the phone. And by the way, that actually happened. He literally hung up the phone, not once, but twice with 2 different countries. "I don't like what they said. I jacked up the tariffs 25%. Fuck you." I go, "That's not diplomacy, that's bullying and being a shithead." Okay, because 'Cause I'm sure there's things we want out of the Swiss banking system. We're not gonna get it if we just treat them like they're children who need a spanking by pedo-Nazis. That's not gonna work, okay? And going back to independence, yeah, this is how we sit here and think. This is not working. Like, I got about 3 or 4 as strong independents as I am friends in my circle. We keep talking about this stuff over and over and over, and they're like, nobody's impressing me. Who's pissing me off is the Trumpian orbit. Because what you're doing, I mean, it's one thing to see Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries be fucking cowards. Okay. It's another thing to see MGT and AOC fundraise more than they legislate. What's starting to piss off independents is you ain't getting shit done for real. And the shit you are getting done is made up by your Nazi Narnia fantasies of Christian theocratic nationalism or just hucksterism. But when the hucksterism gets personified onto an individual, that's where you're losing, I think, all the rest of the independents. Nobody's going to buy all of them. No, we don't want a cult of personality. We want governance. We're not getting governance. We're just getting the cult of personality. I wrote the essay a long time back, a couple months ago. What are you going to do when he goes all full on Idi Amin, the dictator of Uganda in the 70s? Because, Idi Amin wanted to make Uganda great again. We all saw how that went. Okay. And Idi Amin did bombastic things. Like, he several times challenged Queen Elizabeth to a boxing match. Arrogance, bombasticness, empty theater, yada, yada, yada. Okay. These are all hallmarks of the dictatorships who don't give a shit. They just give a shit about kissing whoever's ass who created the persona of the deity extraordinaire that should take over the country and make every decision for himself. Okay. And this is a blind spot for liberals and progressives, more progressives than liberals, but progressives, you have a blind spot. You think if you go on to some hard left dude and you make the same attachment to personification, you're making the same mistake the Trumpian right is making. Now, do I think the far right is a lot worse than the progressives or the far left? Oh, by a measure of about 1,001 right now. Okay. But the problem is you get caught in the same psychological traps now and again, and you should try to avoid that. Because the left seems to forget sometimes it's hard to convince a centrist independent, especially somebody who's an individualist. That's what really groovy libertarian means in my mind. I'm a very individualist type person. I believe in an individual's rights. I don't give a fuck about groupthink. Do not care, have never cared. Okay. That's why I was quote unquote pro gay marriage, actually pro contract, if you really think about it. Well before a lot of other people were. I was a decade ahead of the Clintons, probably 15 years ahead of the Clintons, because I sat down and thought about it over, a nice glass of Irish whiskey. And I said, contract. Can two adults sign a contract with each other? And basically, if it doesn't involve puppies or children in the wrong way, can two adults do anything they fucking want? Yeah, yeah. In fact, they can. And can. If you want to be two, and just to let you know, just for the record, I've been to 3 gay marriages. My family member, my oldest daughter is queer. I've had queer friends for 30, 40 years. I go to freaky parties in San Francisco where everybody who they is who they say they are. Okay. Um, I I am not weirded out. I am not ashamed. I'm not offended. I don't. You do you. Now, if you want to be an old bear and an old queen living in a second floor walk up in San Francisco and you want to go and be two dudes getting married, I will stand at your wedding ceremony and congratulate you at your reception. Do it. It's your life. If you want to sign contract to share all your shit and live together, do it. Be happy. Good for you. I decided to sign a contract and share all my shit 38 years ago. It was the best decision I ever fucking made. Why wouldn't I wish that on other people? I'm happy, and I thought pursuit of happiness was an American thing. I didn't think it was limited because, how you bump your uglies. I don't care. I don't care. What I care about is not the fake moralism they always bring up. What I care about is, do we allow people to have the same rights, liberty, and access to contract as everybody else? That's what I care about. And I also want my friends to be happy. Like I said, I have queer folk friends. I mean, lots of them. Okay, I want you all to be happy. I told them this over drinks and dinner. I was like, yeah, I want you guys to be happy. Okay. I think the government's out of fucking line telling you can't sign a contract that's available to everybody else. Now, if the contract didn't come with benefits, which it does, like a marriage license is a whole compendium of local, state, county, and federal benefits. Now, if you want to take all those benefits away and get government out of the business of marriage, then you can do with marriage whatever you want. But if you're going to provide social engineering mechanisms with that marriage license, the contract, then that contract has to be available to everybody under the 14th Amendment. And I don't give a shit if you don't, because I've said this before, but I love saying this, so I'll say it again. America's problem with queer folk is not lesbians. You'll never see even the weirdest of weirdest theocratic Christian nationalists turn away if two beautiful blondes are having sex. Two blonde women. Okay. What America doesn't like is gay men's sex. They don't like the penis on penis sex. That's something they don't like. And again, I don't care what you do with your little bits. I care about the structure we set up for society and how we treat people equally so they can live the best individual life in a system that promotes liberty, due process, equal treatment, and a pursuit of happiness. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Declaration of Independence. That should still mean something to people. You just going, well, Jesus said, well, Jesus actually didn't say that. And half the time, I don't think the hardcore Catholics or the hardcore evangelicals actually read the Bible. And if they do, they really get Paul the evangelical and Jesus confused for some reason. And I think it's cultural. I think it's political. I think it's high school clique shit that makes them do this. But yeah, as an independent, I don't want to hear any of that shit. I don't want to hear how you're going to protect a brick and mortar restaurant from the food trucks. One is a brick and mortar restaurant. The other one is a restaurant on four wheels running off a natural gas and diesel setup. Okay. They're both restaurants. Regulate restaurants. Don't regulate ownership like that because you don't like ownership A versus ownership B. Bullshit. That's how we end up with redlining and housing. We should have never done that either. Okay. Well, I have to blow my nose. We should be able to make individual decisions. That's my point. We should allow people to live their individual lives. You should set up a tight little guardrail, but if you're inside that guardrail, you're all good. So knock it off. Okay. None of what Trumpian politics represent today speak to where I am politically, socially, culturally, morally, or ethically. Okay. And a warning to Democratic candidates. Make sure you are acceptable politically, culturally, socially, morally, and ethical. Because if you're not, you're going to run into the same fucking problems. And what I really don't like is the scapegoating politics. As an independent and an individualist, that's what grinds my gears. Oh, everybody's a good person in America, except for those trans folks. They're mentally ill and we need to take away their rights. No, we don't. No, we don't. Hey, I know a carpenter in the city loves pink taffeta. He's a carpenter. He wears overalls most of the week. Shows up to a weekend party in pink taffeta. He loves the pink taffeta. No, is that my clothing choice? No, I like blue jeans and a Rush T-shirt, as you can tell. Okay, um, do I think we should take away his civil rights because of his choice of clothing? No, or because he identifies in the wrong gender. If you think that's an issue, no, that's not a reason to take away someone's civil rights. No, no, and it never was. Okay, same reason you don't take away rights because of religion or tribe or race or gender or sex or anything like that. Why? Because the individual has rights. The individual has a right to the pursuit of happiness. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. That should be available to everybody. Okay. What a lot of independents don't like is they keep talking about, oh, the American dream is true. As long as you bend a knee in fealty to dear leader and you join the Christian theocratic nationalist cult. Only then can you have the American dream. No, I'm not joining the He-Man Woman Haters Club. Go fuck yourself. Hell, I won't even go to libertarian meetings. Why? Meetings are such a waste of time. So, good decision today. It ain't over. He still thinks that tariffs are the magical closet door to Narnia and Narnia's special economy where everybody's rich. No, he wants the tariffs because it's a mechanism to create yet another slush fund. Because corrupt politicians, the first thing they do, set up that slush fund. He's got a meme coin slush fund. He's got a tariff slush fund. He's got a Venezuelan oil slush fund. Slush fund, slush fund. Oh my, here's another slush fund. Yeah. So the real reason they're this pissed, they're this vitriolic against the decision, and they're calling Justice Roberts a Democrat. That's funny. Because remember, a third of the court has been appointed to the Supreme Court or nominated to the Supreme Court. By whom? Dear leader, porn star Humper. A third of the court are his judges. And they went, nope. Oh, the ballroom slush fund. Good point, Pam. Yes, yes, yes. The ballroom's another one. Which I didn't even. I hate to get conspiratorial, conspiracy theory. I don't think it's a ballroom. I think he wants to build some sort of bunker intelligence base, some Doctor Strangelove mine shaft. Mr. President, we cannot have a mine shaft gap. Yeah, I think it's one of those crazy things. I don't even think it's about a ballroom anymore. Because first, I think he was just trying to remodel the White House just to make it look like a Mar-a-Lago, that Florida shithole that looks like, Lawrence Welk took a shit in the living room. For sure, it's never what he says. That's a thing with me and my friends. We've been talking about that. It's like, can you just tell me one time out of 100 what you're going to do is actually the truth, or what just happened is the actual truth? And never ever is it what it seems to be, or what we're told it is at the press conference. I mean, it is that, like, that brutally off base. And that's another thing I just don't like. I mean, I know everybody's got a fib in politics. I get it. I get it. Um, but I never liked bald-faced lying. And every single policy is about bold-faced lying. Well, like, being a former drug undercover guy for the army, um, overseas and in America, I don't like what they're doing in the Caribbean. There's no death penalty assigned to any drug trafficking law. It doesn't exist. But you can sit there and you can lie to us saying, oh, we have intelligence that said they were trafficking drugs. No, you were just showing routes on a fucking tracking map and went, oh, that route seems to be the route the drug traffickers take. Double tap. Okay. What you said the information was as justification to start shooting at fishing boats was so facile, so reductive, so empty. And then you turn around saying, like, well, yeah, we just caught Dr. No from James Bond. Didn't you? Clap. Will you please clap for us? Like, no, no. You were literally just watching a fucking radar map and going, well, they could be going here. That could be drug trafficking. Let's kill them. And, like, there's no proximity. They're firing shore-to-ship missiles at these boats. It wasn't like you're approaching the boats like the Coast Guard introduction process. You approach the boat with guns and go, okay, everybody put your hands up, and somebody pulls a gun, and then you gotta defend yourself. There's no law enforcement defense theory here. They're literally just watching boats on radar going, oh, that one must be the drug dealer. Kill him. Imagine if we did that to rich Republican college kids in university campuses. We catch them transferring a prescription pill or a hit of Molly or a bump of Coke to another student. The campus security guard gets to walk up and put a bullet through their face. Boom, 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 boom. No trial, no due process, no arrest, no grand jury, no patet jury, no judge, no lawyers, no DA. We just walk up and shoot your white cracker Republican ass 19-year-old son in the face because we suspect he may be a drug dealer because he was walking a path on campus which was indicative of drug trafficking. How about we do that? How many times do you think that will fly? None. I want some sanity to be returned to this assembly because we don't have any sanity right now. We have a lot of lies. We have a lot of grievances. We have 6 tons of animus. We don't have policy. We certainly don't have the rule of law. But we got a little respite today. I'm going to call today a win. SOTUS, and yeah, even a guy I don't really like, Chief Justice Roberts, at least gave us a little bit of a break for a day, telling him, you know what, you didn't tell us the real story. There is no emergency. There is no dollar crisis. There's no balance of payment crisis. Therefore, you're not following the law. That was a good thing. Just we have to remember the battle isn't over. So stay mindful, pay attention, breathe. Even Sal 9000 ChatGPT, we're having a chatbot session earlier today talking about the decision. She's like, okay, take a breath. And I had to tell her, I was like, I'm not mad. I'm somewhere between embarrassed and frustrated, but I'm not mad. The people I'm mad at is actually not Trump. The people I'm mad at is the last 40 years of Congress who went to a sleep at the wheel and allowed the era of Trumpianism to rise up. They didn't do their jobs. They thought taking money from lobbyists were their jobs. They thought sweetheart vacation deals as fact-finding missions was their job. It's not. So I am I think Trump is wrong time and time and time and time and time again. I'm embarrassed by the way he speaks to people because it's so unpresidential. Like I even laughed with my friend. We were SMSing each other the other night, and we're like, you know what? I'd actually pay $1,000 to get W back right now. And I wasn't even a fan. I didn't vote for him once. I did not a fan of W. Okay. I would give $1,000 on the head out of my own pocket just to have W come back and sit in the Oval Office and take things over and get Trump the fuck out of there. That's how bad I think Trump's doing. But yeah, let's take the win today as a win because it is. Now, will they take the loss? Of course not. They're narcissists. They're ego driven, fucking ridiculous people. Okay. But let's not dissuade the fact that today the rule of law actually won, at least for a couple of hours. And the fact is, now dear leader has dug his own hole. Now, if he drops out for whatever reason, and it's JD Vance, JD Vance is going to be standing in a 30-foot hole, not knowing what the fuck to do. Okay, because at the end of this 150-day period, if he starts the 10% under the Trade Act of 1974, he's got 150 days. That only puts him midsummer. There's no way Congress approves higher taxes on imports in a midterm election year. That's not happening. He's going to take another loss. And then when prices start coming down after he takes the political loss, he's going to be exposed for what? Lying to us all. Because tariffs never reduced the cost of anything. All it did was create more inflation. Okay. Today was a good day. It was still a weird day, but today was a good day. Let's build on that because people are going to learn that he's just looking for an excuse to what he wants to do. He doesn't have an idea or policy behind what he wants to do. He just has an action he thinks he can market. Whether that action is a win, lose, or a draw, does not care. He just wants to promote Trump vodka again, Trump University, Trump steaks. Tariffs are the same thing in his head. It's just a promotion so you think I'm doing something cool. What he doesn't know is he's digging that hole deeper every day. And if somebody else has to stand in that hole, like JD Vance, he will have destroyed the Republican Party for the next 20 years. And I'll leave you on that good note. Be independent, vote an independent, run for local office as an independent. Until next time, please think about it. Peace.